From shutting off the last drops of Russian oil to a new EU presidency determined to reshape Europe's future, changes accelerating across the continent. Let's break it all down and put you in focus on these hot events. This is UATV English. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and socials to stay ahead of the curve. Imagine this: decades of Russian oil flooding Central Europe, now officially over. The final pipeline deal is dead. No more fueling the Kremlin war machine. From Prague to Warsaw, the region just slammed the door on Putin's barrel empire. How did they do it? What's next for the gas prices, global security, and Russia's shrinking war wallet? Keep watching.
On June 30th, the final contract for Russian oil supplies to the Czech Republic expired, marking Central Europe's liberation from the aggressor state's oil. This was announced by Ireneusz Fonfara, president of Orlen, one of the largest fuel suppliers to the Baltic states, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, and Germany.
Russian oil money will no longer be used to kill people in Ukraine and elsewhere. Energy security in Central European countries will be ensured by supplies from the Persian Gulf, the Middle East, the United States, and Africa.
The phase-out of Russian oil is a significant contribution to Europe's energy security, emphasized Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk.
Today, during the war where Russia is the main negative actor, I don't need to explain to anyone that it would be a grave sin to rely on Poland's energy industry being based, for example, on supplies from Russia. This has cost us all great effort and significant funds.
The primary route for Russian oil to Central Europe was the Druzhba pipeline. The Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary, being landlocked, faced the greatest challenges in phasing out imports from the aggressor state. Prague was the first to halt resource imports via Druzhba. In April 2025, the Czech government announced the completion of the TAL Plus project, fully integrating the Czech Republic into Europe's oil transport network. The Prime Minister assured that abandoning the aggressor state's fuel would not lead to price spikes.
Diesel fuel prices are decreasing, which is very positive. But it's not just the price of fuel that matters. It's where the oil comes from, what it's made of, and how secure we are in this regard. It's critical to what extent we've freed ourselves from dependence on unreliable suppliers, which made us highly vulnerable. In this case, I mean Russia.
Since the start of Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine, Europe has ceased to be the primary market for Russian oil. Moscow has redirected its supplies to Beijing and New Delhi. Nevertheless, the Kremlin continues to use European ports for fuel transport. Through sanctions packages, EU countries are restricting Russian oil access to the internal market and preventing Moscow from selling fuel above the $60 per barrel price cap. On June 30th, EU member states agreed to extend sanctions against Russia until January 31st, 2026.
The EU today officially agreed to extend sectoral sanctions on Russia. We will continue to pile pressure on Moscow to end its war in Ukraine. Each sanction weakens Russia's ability to wage war, Kaja Kallas, Vice President of the European Commission, on X.
Depriving Russia of oil and gas revenues will force Moscow to negotiate, said Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. He noted that energy export revenues currently cover Russia's war expenses. By fueling its military-industrial complex with foreign currency, Moscow continues to threaten Euro-Atlantic security.
Moscow rejects all peace proposals, refuses a ceasefire, and dismisses U.S. peace efforts. Instead, Russia intensifies its terror. The longer they face no consequences for their actions, the longer they will delay. Sanctions pressure is now a key tool to force Moscow to end its aggression, agree to an unconditional ceasefire, and restore a just and lasting peace. These must be devastating sanctions, coordinated with key allies and countries.
Striking at Russia's ability to sell oil is also under consideration in Washington. In April, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham proposed a bill imposing 500% tariffs on countries purchasing oil from the aggressor state. Graham noted that 84 out of 100 senators are ready to vote for the bill. Reported by Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.
New EU presidency, same battleground. And this time Denmark's in charge. As of the 1st of July, Copenhagen takes the lead at the helm of the Council of the EU, with one mission in mind: push Ukraine's membership forward, tighten Europe's defense, and finally make Russian gas a thing of the past. From launching joint long-range weapons production with Ukraine to backing €1.5 billion defense investment plan, Denmark isn't just talking support, it's manufacturing it. But there's still one problem: Viktor Orban. And Denmark is turning up the heat. So what's next for Ukraine's EU bid and Europe's security? Let's break it all down.
As of July 1st, Denmark has assumed the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union, taking over from Poland. For the next 6 months, Copenhagen will coordinate the work of EU member states and shape the Union's agenda. This is Denmark's 8th time holding the presidency. According to a leading European think tank, the key priorities will continue to be security, defense, and EU enlargement.
There is no doubt that the Danish presidency will push forward negotiations with all candidate countries, including Ukraine and Moldova, both of which have strong support. We face difficulties regarding their accession because there is not unanimous backing for opening the cluster for Ukraine. We want to advance with Ukraine and Moldova simultaneously, and we are at the moment thinking about how to be able to do that. Karsten Granbeck Jensen, permanent representative of Denmark to the EU, speaking to journalists.
Denmark has consistently supported Ukraine's bid to join the European Union. According to Europe Minister Marie Bjerre, 26 of 27 EU countries back Ukraine's European integration. The sole opponent remains Hungary, represented by its Prime Minister Viktor Orban. However, Bjerre noted that pressure on Budapest continues in hopes of reaching EU-wide consensus.
And security is also about enlargement with new member states, because we need a more stable Europe and a Europe with stronger geopolitical weight. And that is why we will prioritize progress in the negotiations with Ukraine in particular, which is fighting for our freedom. The Commission assesses that they are ready for that, and we are 26 countries that support that. Unfortunately, Hungary is blocking, and that is why we are making sure to put pressure on them as much as we can.
Beyond diplomatic support, Denmark is actively involved in strengthening Ukraine's defense. Copenhagen was one of the initiators of a new military aid model in which foreign governments directly finance Ukraine's defense industry. This approach, dubbed the Danish model, has brought together several nations committed to supporting Ukraine in its resistance against Russian aggression. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov announced that, under this model, 1.5 billion euros in investments are expected in 2025 for Ukraine's defense industry. Additionally, Denmark will be the first country with which Ukraine launches joint production of long-range weapons outside of Ukrainian territory.
Denmark has already allocated 500 million DKK to launch Ukrainian defense production on its soil. All facilities established under this project will serve to strengthen Ukraine's defense forces. This is a strategic move that boosts our joint defense capabilities, strengthens supply chains, and creates new opportunities for technology exchange and integration of our defense sectors. This partnership enhances the security of Ukraine, Denmark, and all of Europe, today and into the future. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on Facebook.
The upcoming 6 months under Denmark's presidency are expected to be just as eventful as the previous term led by Poland. Analysts note that Copenhagen will continue many of Warsaw's priorities, especially in the areas of security and defense. The reason? The ongoing threat from Russia, which the EU increasingly refers to as a direct challenge to European security. During Poland's presidency, the EU approved a large-scale defense initiative known as SAFE, with a 150 billion euro budget. The funds aim to boost the European defense industry, and Ukraine is also expected to benefit from this program.
This is something unprecedented in the EU's legislative process. From a high-level political decision to submitting a legislative proposal to adopting a full-fledged program with procedures, regulations, and real funding, it took just 71 days. Usually, such work takes several presidencies to complete.
In addition to defense initiatives, Poland has been one of the most vocal and consistent advocates for putting pressure on Moscow. During its presidency, the EU approved the 16th and 17th sanctions packages, as well as new tariffs on Russian and Belarusian goods. Warsaw also championed the idea of European energy independence, firmly opposing the use of Russian energy resources.
15 lat od czasu, kiedy Polska proponowała.
It has been 15 years since Poland first proposed the idea of an energy union, a common energy policy and joint procurement to reduce dependence on external suppliers, especially Russia. Back then, it failed. But today, as we close our presidency, I can say with satisfaction that these long-standing Polish ambitions have become European reality.
The European Commission has previously unveiled a plan to completely phase out Russian gas by 2027. 25 of the 27 EU member states have backed it. Hungary and Slovakia remain opposed. From June 1st, under its EU presidency, Denmark will continue working on securing agreement on this plan among all member states and the European Parliament. Reported by Nikita Skoplikov, UATV News.
Energy, security, and political will. Europe is drawing new lines. Whether it's cutting Russian oil or fast-tracking Kyiv to Brussels, the message is clear. The old rules no longer apply. What do you think? Is the EU doing enough to secure itself and support Ukraine? Drop your thoughts in the comments.